presence on the Cloud Expo floor, so that you'll just have to take on trust from me. But you do not have to take on trust that we have the CTO of Rackspace to talk with us, that he's going to orient us about cloud computing in the cloud era. I like the cloud era. So the progenitor of the cloud era himself, John Engates, please, let's have a thunderous round of applause.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me get oriented here with the clicker. There we go. So this is our fine print. We had our earnings release yesterday, so I'm probably in the clear in terms of any new news or anything. But if you hear anything you like and you decide to go trade stocks and our stock doesn't do what you thought it was going to do, that's sort of our disclaimer around that. My name is John Engates. I'm the CTO at Rackspace. I've been at Rackspace a long time, going on 12 years. There's my contact info if you ever want to send me an email. There's my email address. Whenever I start a presentation at an event like this, I like to think about what I have in common, what Rackspace has in common with the audience, with the people in the room. I think we all have competition. It's global competition nowadays. It's no longer the guy down the street. It's the guy in Asia or China or Europe or wherever it might be. We also need strong IT to keep up that competition. Competition is just constantly amping up their game, and I think IT is a part of that, and we need to have a strong competency there. We need our IT systems to be reliable and secure. We don't want to have downtime. We don't want to be seen as leaving data out in the cold, so to speak, letting people have access to it. We need to make sure we're living up to our financial responsibilities. We have constraints around financial aspects of our business. The capital is not there anymore. The economy, you see it every day in the news, something new on the horizon. Demands. The business is going to continue to grow. The people in the organization want more from you every day. They want you to raise your game. They want to continue to maintain what they've got, but we have to continue to innovate and grow. And we all face something. This conference is sort of cloud. It's all about cloud computing. That's unprecedented change. That's on the horizon. It's here today. Actually, it's not really on the horizon anymore. There's still a lot more to go, but that's really a huge change. Cloud computing. We have events like this that just sort of are designed to help explain it, to help customers digest it, to help people figure out what they're supposed to do. It's confusing to people. It isn't something that you immediately grasp if you're not a techie or a rocket scientist. So it's something new, and it's really a big change. It's huge in terms of how IT is going to be done over the next few years. I think this book a few years back, The Big Switch, was sort of the book that I looked at and said, well, that makes sense. It was really explaining how back in the day when companies used to generate their own power, their own electricity, and it all moved to the grid over time. Well, that's the same thing that's sort of going on with computing nowadays. It's moving to a centralized consumption model, and it is the future. It's a bigger change, in fact, than what we've seen in the past. If you think back in history of computing, back in the 70s and 80s, we had the mainframe era. Mainframes were really the first computers that businesses used. In the 90s, we sort of moved into what they call the client-server era. Everybody remembers the move to PCs on the desk, servers in the closet down the hall. And that was a big shift because it took centralized computing and made it available to everyone much more freely than in the past. Now, the change that's going on now is this change to the cloud era. Starting a few years back, maybe 2010, maybe before that, we started to see this shift happening. And this is an even bigger shift than what went on when we went from mainframe to client-server, because this time it's not just about the IT department, it's about consumers as well. So this intersection of consumer computing and business computing and sort of a new consumption model is how all of this is playing out nowadays. And it really is much more complicated and much more difficult to grasp if you're used to doing things in your own data center and having control over everything. So, that leads a lot of CIOs, a lot of people that run IT departments to feel like the cloud is coming to get them, coming to get their people, coming to take away their data center and their sort of change everything. And change is hard sometimes. But if you look at it in another way, it's also possible that this is something that's coming to help you and help you meet the demands that are put on you. I think in the last presentation, if you were in here, the woman that's speaking said that it was going to be impossible to meet the needs of the consumerization of IT, the expectations that your users have about how they want to use IT without the cloud. And that's the opportunity we have, is to start embracing these technologies so that you can build services and capabilities and applications the same way that the big guys do. And that's really, I think, how it can help you. So think about the cloud, how the positive aspects of the cloud, how they're there to help you. Think, instant computing, turning computing on very quickly. In the past, it took weeks, sometimes months for you to provision new computing because you had to order it, had to ship, it had to install into your data center. That took time. So nowadays, you add computing at the touch of a button. You can also shrink it, which is something you couldn't do before. You could maybe do that over a long period of time, but you couldn't certainly do that on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. Nowadays, if you sell a business unit or reduce your headcount, you can actually reduce your spend on computing as well. For example, software as a service. You don't have to have as many seats of email or collaboration or Salesforce or whatever it might be. If you want to turn it off, you can. So turning it off completely is something that just wasn't possible before. The other aspect of it is this instantaneous provisioning. If you get a bunch of new users on board, if you hire people, if you acquire a company, you can turn those users up and get them running very quickly, whereas it might have taken weeks or at least many days to do it in the past. The provisioning happens instantly. I think that's the sort of aspect that also developers love about cloud computing, is they can turn on those resources they need to do their test and dev and do whatever they need to do as quickly as possible. So this is why this big switch is sort of I guess it's inevitable, but it's also enticing to a lot of people. They can pay for what they use on a utility-based model. They get access to unlimited computing, unlimited processing. They have the elasticity to scale up and scale down. They have on-demand self-service, and it's very automated. Those things are just the facts of life nowadays as we move into this new era. And what that means to you as a CIO is it means you can maximize your revenue, you can reduce your costs, you can expedite time to the market, you can get things done quicker, you can focus your resources, and you can do more projects. Those are all very important things. Let's see. Push the wrong button. Let's switch gears for a second and think about where we came from. It's hard if you think about cloud computing this year versus last year, but it's very easy to grasp if you compare it this year versus, like, let's say 10 years ago. This is a Windows XP desktop circa 2001. If you think about what 2001 was like, that was 10 years ago. Windows XP had just launched. In 2001, we had slow broadband. We had very little Wi-Fi. At Rackspace, we didn't really even allow for Wi-Fi because we thought the security was a problem back then. We didn't want people snooping on our Wi-Fi network. We didn't have iPhones. We didn't have smartphones. We didn't have tablets. We had no 4G. The only thing close to a smartphone was the BlackBerry that looked like a pager. Do you remember that one that you sort of had a wheel and you turned it on its side? That was the closest thing we had. There was no Twitter, no Facebook. I don't even know if we knew the word social network back then. There were only a half a dozen programs on the typical PC, and I put programs in quotes because that's what we used to call them. Now we call them apps, but in that day and age we called them programs. You installed a few programs. They were Excel, Word, PowerPoint, Outlook, and maybe a couple of business apps. Those were the first maybe dozen or half dozen applications that you put onto a Windows desktop. And the cloud was still something that we put on a network diagram at the whiteboard. That was what cloud computing was, is sort of that network. So think about, though, where we are today. Today we have these tablets, smartphones, smart devices, whatever you want to call them. These are truly the first cloud devices. They're almost useless without the cloud. Think about that for a second. They're really not useful at all. I mean, you get your movies from the cloud, you download your apps from the cloud, you access the cloud to play with all the social networking tools and connect to the internet, and now you even can talk to your phone and ask it for directions, and it talks to the cloud. So they're almost useless without the cloud. So they are cloud devices. The cloud device that I use is an iPhone. It's not just a device, though. It's an ecosystem. If you think about those apps, my iPhone has probably 6 pages of apps. I have to scroll back and forth. I put them into folders, but just imagine 6 pages times 16 apps. That's a lot of apps, over close to 100 probably on most geek smartphones like mine. So think about that. That's 100 different companies that I now have some relationship with. I might have gotten the app for free. I might have paid $1 for it, but I have a relationship. I'm feeding information to those companies. They're consuming data about how I use their application. It's just a very different world than that Windows XP desktop with 6 applications that no one ever knew anything about how I used or when I used or whatever. It's very different. That's going on not just on the smartphone and the consumer, it's also going on in enterprise computing. Think about what's going on with the way we consume business applications. This was sort of the old way. It showed up in a box. Somebody came out and installed it or integrated it or whatever they do to get it up and running in your company. They walk away, and 18 months later, they come and knock on your door and say, it's time for an upgrade. Well, that's not how it works in the cloud. The cloud way is that you go to a browser, you consume your application in that browser over the web. That's the cloud, so to speak. It's not just an application anymore. It's a social enterprise application. It even says so right there on the front page of the Salesforce.com website. Think about what Salesforce.com has in terms of intelligence about you as a user. They know things like who you are, they know where you work, they know where you're located specifically, whether you're at home or at office. They know when you use their product, they know what buttons you click in their application, the whole workflow. They know where you get stuck, they know what features you actually use and which ones you avoid. They know who in your organization you interact with, because now they have this new chatter feature where they can see who your sort of social network is within the company. They know which third-party applications you're plugging into Salesforce, and they may even have a credit card number on you, so they can add value over time by charging you for upgrades and features. Those are things that are very, very different than the way computing used to be done. And this is the cloud way. This is the future. More and more applications are going to be done like this. Whether they're installed in your data center or in a cloud data center, they're still going to have this kind of interaction with you. So what that's leading to is this utopian vision for a lot of people in the cloud industry that sooner or later all your applications will be consumed from the cloud. In a utopian world, you just fire up a menu, you'd say, I want this app, this app, this app, this app. You'd be done, and you'd consume all your apps from the cloud. We call that an all-cloud enterprise. Now, maybe some small companies, some startups, some little mom and pop shops, maybe they can be all cloud enterprises. But the truth is, for a long, long time to come, most organizations, most real large companies are not going to be all cloud enterprises. They're going to be some cloud enterprises. The cloud is for everyone, not for everything. I actually heard that in the last presentation too, is that the cloud is not for everything. Well, when I say the cloud is in this case, I sort of mean software as a service is for everyone, just not for everything. Because if you think about your enterprise, you probably have a portfolio of applications. Maybe it's 10 if you're a small company, maybe it's 1,000 if you're a big company. But for that number of applications, a few of them are going to be easy to go to the cloud. Email, collaboration, Salesforce, those kinds of things are probably pretty mature at this point. They're ready for the cloud. But then there may be some applications that aren't anywhere near ready because they don't even exist in the cloud yet. There may be no manufacturing tool for your specific industry. There may be no collaboration tool for your security level. There may be some missing features that you absolutely need that just aren't ready for the you aren't ready to move those to the cloud. Or the companies that are building those applications are just too small and too new for you to trust your whole enterprise to. So that's why we mean cloud is for everyone, just not for everything. So in the meantime, what do you do? If you want to go to the cloud, you're here at this event because you're thinking about cloud computing, what is sort of the thing you do in sort of the meantime until the applications are ready? Well, you need a bridge. You need a bridge to sort of that next generation of of computing architecture. And the bridge today is really coming in the form of public cloud infrastructure as a service. Think about infrastructure as a way for you to start to reap a lot of the benefits of cloud computing without having to wait for applications to arrive. You can start moving your existing applications into the cloud. You can start to build your own applications in a cloud model without having to wait for software as a service to solve it for you. And that's what a lot of companies are doing. That's how they are really first embracing cloud computing, is by building or moving applications into the public cloud. Rackspace has a cloud. I mean, this is what we're here to talk about. We've got a booth here at the event. So the public cloud at Rackspace, today we're one of the largest public cloud infrastructure as a service providers. We have a number of services. We've got cloud computing, cloud storage, those kind of things. And so if you're interested in cloud computing, check it out. At Rackspace, we've really done some really cool stuff there, and we're proud of what we've built. Now, that's not really what I want to talk about. I want to talk about sort of what we're doing with cloud beyond just sort of the bare bones, we've got a cloud. That would be sort of boring if that was my whole story. So what else do we got? So a lot of people that are consuming cloud, they find that it's difficult to get started with a cloud computing infrastructure because it's all new concepts, it's all new paradigms. Sometimes your applications have to be modified, sometimes they're new tools that you have to start to consume. And so a lot of people need support and help and advice. And there, Rackspace is doing something else to bridge the gap for you. We're actually helping customers by managing their public cloud for them in the form of what we call Rackspace Managed Cloud Server. So if you think about most of the cloud providers out there, it's sort of do it yourself. You go and spin up the server. You have to manage the provisioning of the operating system inside that cloud server. You have to monitor it yourself. You have to respond when something fails in the middle of the night. And so you're on your own to some extent. At Rackspace, we've always been a company that's around, we've built the company around customer service, world-class customer service that we call fanatical support. So we put support on everything we do, and it's no different in the cloud. Here we will actually take responsibility for your cloud. You're managing your cloud infrastructure for you in our data center. We'll make sure your apps are up and running. We'll troubleshoot them with you. We'll fix them when they fail in the middle of the night. You don't really have to be as much hands-on in a managed cloud scenario. So that's a big win for a lot of companies that want to try it out. Another problem that a lot of companies face, I talked about moving your applications to the cloud. A lot of companies face this problem of their application isn't really compatible with the cloud as it's been presented. So maybe their database needs a very specific performance characteristic, or maybe they need special storage, a SAN or a NAS. Maybe they need very structured security around their cloud that isn't available in the public cloud today. That's something else that Rackspace is trying to build a bridge for you in terms of sort of a hybrid of cloud computing and traditional architecture. We call it Rack Connect. This is our product that we've launched that helps customers bridge between a dedicated server and a cloud server and start to mix and match those as they see fit. If your application requires an Oracle database with an EMC SAN, you can have that, but you can also have cloud servers to run the web and application servers, and you can scale those up and you can scale them down. You can even use RightScale to do it. RightScale is a partner of Rackspace, and they're here at this event. They've got their customer conference. They're actually building RightScale on top of Rackspace Cloud, on top of Rackspace hybrid architecture. And here's an example of a customer that's using our hybrid. The Rack Connect solution. So in this scenario, what they've done, this is a company called Living Social. Everybody know Living Social? They're like Groupon. They're a competitor to Groupon. I think they actually might be partially owned by Amazon, or they have an investment by Amazon. But they're using Rackspace Cloud, and Living Social basically uses the hybrid architecture because they want to have scalability on the front end. They want the web servers and the application servers to be able to scale out, and they want to load balance the traffic between both dedicated and cloud resources. So in this case, they're using an F5 load balancer. They're putting all of their public-facing rich media content on the cloud, and they're putting all of their back-end secure infrastructure on the dedicated side. So they're able to meet all their compliance requirements. They're able to meet all their performance requirements by putting those servers on dedicated machines, but they're getting the cost benefits and the elasticity benefits of cloud computing. And that's just an example one customer. We've got lots of others that are using this. And this, in fact, is one of the sort of leading products at Rackspace nowadays, is sort of this idea of hybrid cloud computing. People just sort of can't get enough of it once they have a taste of it. What else? What other bridges do you need between where we are and where we'd like to be? I think another one is this idea of standards, or the lack thereof. There's a lot of companies in the cloud space that all have their own idea of what their API standards ought to look like, how you ought to use their cloud. We've sort of taken a different approach and decided to open source a lot of the technology that we've used to build our cloud, in hopes that people would start to standardize around that. So we have this idea of open cloud in the form of OpenStack. OpenStack is a project that launched about a little over a year ago, and it is basically an open source project to help companies build clouds, both public clouds, private clouds, and whatever type of cloud you want. For us, it was basically software that we needed to build to help us turn our sort of commodity server infrastructure into a pool of cloud computing. And for other people, other service providers, it would be the same. But for a lot of businesses, it represents a way to have their own private version of cloud computing in their own data center. So this is software to build a cloud anywhere. It's an ecosystem. I mentioned how the world is now not just about devices, but about ecosystems. Well, this is the same in cloud computing. You don't necessarily want to go down a dead end. You want to go down a path where you have a lot of support, a lot of plugins, a lot of applications that can run on top of the cloud. And so the ecosystem that OpenStack represents is almost possibly more important than even the software itself, because you're really buying into a large number of companies that are backing this. Gives you flexibility in how you deploy your private cloud. It gives you some standards. This is very critical because a lot of enterprises are reluctant to adopt the cloud until they feel like they have some choice or they have a backup plan. They need standards before they're willing to go all in. And this is a way that we're breaking down that lack of standards. And that really leads to sort of the no fear of lock-in. People don't want to feel locked into one particular vendor. Even if they love the vendor today, they feel like, man, I want to have some way to have a backup plan. So this OpenStack project was started by Rackspace and NASA. NASA, the space agency, they were part of the original team that kicked off OpenStack. We've since been joined by a number of other companies. Citrix and Dell were two of our early partners, but now HP, Cisco, Microsoft, Intel, AMD, all of these companies are backing OpenStack because they see the power of an open cloud. We sort of look at what the ecosystem, how it's playing out today is you've got Amazon and their leadership in cloud computing. You've got VMware and their leadership in the traditional enterprise virtualization market. And then you've got OpenStack, which represents sort of the open architecture that a lot of people have been looking for. Rather than feeling proprietary and locked in and closed, they want sort of that flexibility, that choice, and that ability to do cloud on their own terms. And I think that's what OpenStack represents. Again, Rackspace is running OpenStack today with its underneath its Cloud Files product. We sort of wrote that software and donated it to OpenStack. We're in the process of adopting OpenStack for more of our cloud infrastructure, and so are a number of other companies. In fact, this conference, I wouldn't be surprised if you wouldn't hear other people talking about how they're using OpenStack. So the last bridge for a lot of bigger organizations is to take OpenStack and to sort of help them build a private cloud. A private cloud, for me, is a way that people can start to take advantage of cloud computing without all of the, without having to go all in with an externally hosted cloud. A lot of companies still own their own data center. They still have capacity in their own data center. They want to reuse some of the existing resources they have. And so we want to help them build private clouds. This week, in fact, we launched a new product that's called Rackspace Cloud Private Edition. It launched yesterday, and it's powered by OpenStack, surprise, surprise. So we've built this organization within Rackspace that is, we call them Rackspace Cloud Builders. They are the team that actually wrote much of OpenStack, and now they're available to come and build and manage a cloud for a customer in their own data center, or in a colo facility, or wherever you want it. So the idea behind the Rackspace Cloud Private Edition is to sort of have the same technology, the same expertise available in your data center. And the long-term vision there is that eventually you'll be able to federate those clouds. You'll be able to combine on-premise resources and cloud-based resources into sort of a coherent pool of resources that you'll have applications running both locations and you'll manage them with a common set of tools. So Rackspace Cloud Private Edition is again, brand new product, and we'd love to tell you more about it. Now, Rackspace is moving to the cloud as fast as we can. We're converting a lot of our products to cloud models. We're doing as much as we can to get to the cloud, and we recognize that a lot of companies are also going in that direction, but maybe they're not going with Rackspace. Maybe they're going on their own. Maybe they're doing it with somebody else. So what I want to leave you with in the last 15 to 20 minutes is sort of some things that you can think about, or strategies that you can use as you think about your migration to the path, the bridges that I talked about and how you might use those. So these are, some of them are a little funny, some of them are a little humorous, but they're meant to sort of help you think about what your strategy ought to be and formulate that. So first of all, don't be an early adopter too early. So this is a little bit about that standards problem, or maybe buying into cloud computing before it's mature enough. What I really mean by this is if there's a software as a service vendor that comes knocking on your door, you've never heard of them before, they don't have any customer track record, they don't have any examples, don't go jumping in headlong into that. You're basically risking your business. On the other hand, if it's a SaaS provider that's been around, they've got a reputation, they've got lots of customers, they're doing great things, you've heard nothing bad about it, well, that's probably the right time. So it's sort of just because it has a cloud stamp on it doesn't mean it's something you ought to do. It's something you ought to take a little bit of care in doing. And this is just a silly example back in the day with the people that jumped on the beta before the VHS came out. They got burned because they were an early adopter a little too early. And you don't want to get burned. So be careful, pay attention, and do your homework. Another one, this was a silly one. C is for cloud. You remember how Cookie Monster used to eat a cookie? He'd jam the whole thing in his mouth and he'd eat it and it'd all fall down on his fur and the crumbs would go everywhere. I don't think he actually ate any of it. I think it just ended up everywhere else. So for a lot of companies, they're going after cloud the same way. They're just going all, they want to go as fast as they can. The business units are telling them to go faster. Come on, let's go. Well, look, that's probably not wise. You want to take what I call baby steps. You want to eat little small bites. And this might be, think about the strategy this way. Think about all of those applications in your portfolio. Maybe just take a module of one application and move it to a cloud provider. Or maybe take a low-risk application and move it to the cloud. If that's the stage you're at. If you're further down the path, you can take bigger bites. But if you're just starting out, don't believe the hype that you have to move everything all at once. That's just not prudent, and I wouldn't suggest it. And that's probably, if you're doing that, it's just, take caution. Your business units, these are the other people. These are the people that are either asking you to go to the cloud, or they're pushing you, or they're telling the CEO to push you to go to the cloud. They're the guys that are sort of the troublemakers in many cases. Good troublemakers, though, because they're trying to turn the business faster. They're trying to, keep the business going and get new customers and new revenue. So it's a good thing. But what you need to give them is not a race car. You need to give them something more like this, where they've got some boundaries. Give them a handful of cloud providers that are approved. Give them some, basically a list of things that they're, approved to do in the cloud today, and tell them why. Don't just say no. Tell them this is why, this is what we've seen, this is what we've done our research. Give them a little bit of room to do what they need to do. Let them go, but make it safe. Let's see. Okay, remember I showed you that chart earlier on with the mainframe and the client server and the cloud? Well, don't build any more systems on last generation technology. Client server is on its way out. Mainframe is certainly, if you're still building mainframe apps, I'm glad you're here at the cloud conference so you can start to get on with your new career, because that's where we're headed. So the point is, just don't keep piling more money onto old systems, and don't build any new ones if you can help it. Build them in a cloud architecture, whether that's in the public cloud or whether it's in a private cloud or just ready for cloud. That's the way you ought to be thinking about those applications. What about the applications you already have, the enterprise applications? Well, what I would say about that is that if the sales guy is coming to renew your enterprise agreement, and he wants to do it on old software, the existing software, then you probably ought to lock him out, keep him out. The sales guy ought to be coming to you with solutions for cloud architectures or newer generation technology rather than just trying to re-up you on the old one. That goes for the CEO as well. That's Steve Ballmer, by the way. I love the guy, but if he's trying to sell you on the old stuff, then don't have any of it. The new stuff is fine. If it's cloud enabled software, if it's consumed as a cloud, or if it looks and smells like a cloud, then fine. But if it's just sort of old software repackaged, then I would say don't go play golf with this guy. And then the last one is try not to sign up for any long-term contracts or agreements. I think that a lot of traditional enterprise software guys are sort of in a position where they have to get one more 2 or 3 year contract out of you before they're really ready with their next generation software. They feel the pinch of not having a SaaS solution versus the SaaS guy down the street, telling you what you ought to be doing. And so I think they're in a position where they want to get you on one more contract so that they have some time. It buys them some time to get that application ready for cloud. But it puts you in a position where you're kind of stuck until the contract runs out. So try not to sign up for any contracts if you can help it. Data centers. A data center is another thing where people can pile in a lot of money if they're not careful. Everybody would love to have this data center, right? It's sort of like something out of the future. But more likely, they have a data center that looks a little bit like this. This is the typical server room or server closet that I see out at customer premise sites all the time. Well, again, I call them money pits. You remember the movie years ago, The Money Pit, with Tom Hanks and Shelley Long? Well, they just put money, good money after bad, into that house, and nothing ever went right. And I feel the same thing about data centers. It's really one of those things where if you have a data center, try your best to not do major upgrades. Certainly don't go out and build a mega data center if you can help it, because the cloud is sort of right over the horizon. That right over the horizon is something that it's just you just have to buy yourself some time. Same goes for those applications. If you have applications, if you can live with those applications for another year or two without making major changes or piling more money into them, then absolutely, by all means, do it. What you really want to do is you want to slow down the game. You want to run out the clock so that you're at the advantage. You have the advantage here. Don't upgrade those systems unless they're going to the cloud. Let's see, what else? Don't buy any more servers. This is a big one. If you have a data center and you've got capacity, sometimes it's a little bit enticing to say, well, let's just buy one more server for that new application. Or let's buy 5 new servers because we need to do this migration. Well, if you can help it, don't buy any more servers. And I don't mean just physical machines. I mean virtual machines too. You've got this problem nowadays of virtual sprawl where you've got new machines popping up every day for something new. If those aren't in a cloud architecture, then you're really just, again, buying into prior generation architecture. You're spending more money on the old model of software when you really ought to be thinking about how to do it in the new model. Really, what that is a private cloud. If it looks like a private cloud in the fact that it's automated, provisioning should be done through an API. You shouldn't have one guy sitting at a console provisioning VMs. It ought to be self-serve. There ought to be a portal to do this. If you're doing it that way, then I approve. You should be going and doing more of that. But if it looks more like last generation architecture, then stop what you're doing and reevaluate. Let's see. Last a little analogy that I like to use to help people understand. I mentioned that cloud is sort of just over the horizon for most applications. It's here today for infrastructure as a service, for things that you can move today. That's very much ready for prime time. But there are applications that you know they're on the horizon. You know they're over just maybe a year or two out, and you want to buy that time if you can. I think about it like this. I think about it like I'm driving this 1998 Honda Accord. It's a good car. It works. I would love to have something new. It's 2008, right? 2008, but I'm driving about a 10-year-old car. Every once in a while I have to do a little maintenance to it. I have to put a little bit of money, but it's not costing me a fortune to drive. It's paid for, all of those good things. Ever since I was a kid, I've always wanted a Camaro, right? So a Camaro was a cool car. I always loved the Camaro back in the day. But in 2008, there was a little problem. GM wasn't making Camaros. So we couldn't go out and buy a new Camaro. I had to sort of wait. This was the last generation Camaro. You remember this one, the 1993 to 2002? If I was to go out in 08 and try to buy a car and it was a Camaro, this is sort of what I'd end up with. But just over the horizon was this one, 2010. The new, next generation, fifth generation Camaro, beautiful car, looked like the classic Camaro that we all knew back in the day, and it really is sort of something really sexy and cool. So that's sort of my analogy to software as a service, cloud computing. It's sort of, just wait a little bit. Hold on to that Honda Accord if you can until you can get the new generation Camaro, and that's sort of how I'm thinking about software as a service. Infrastructure as a service is the bridge. It's the thing that's going to get you there. It's going to help you move your applications to the cloud today, whether that be public cloud or private cloud. It's the way forward in the meantime until when we start to convert more applications to software as a service. So with that, I'm a little ahead of time, so I have a few minutes for questions. If you have any questions or any thoughts on the presentation, any ideas that you'd like to share on how you're building bridges to the cloud, I'm happy to entertain those as well. I can't see very well. If anybody has any questions, you have to stand up and call me out in the back. Okay, well look, if there aren't any good questions, I'm going to give you a few minutes extra. You can head on out to lunch. I know I'm the only thing between you and lunch, so thank you for coming out to see us. Rackspace is presenting out here in the conference facility. We've got 2 booths out there, so come see us, and thank you for coming.